So pleasant good afternoon all. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our second day in our career fair. Yesterday was day one where we had business and finance. Today is day two where we have science and technology. And I take this opportunity to invite the parents and students alike for tomorrow, our last day, day three, which is sports and entertainment. And as Mr. Nelson rightfully said, this has grown from a Form 3 career day to, I will say, an entire school career day. For those of you all who don't know me, I am Mr. Sampat. I am the Dean of Form 1 of St. Mary's College. So I also invited my Form 1 students and parents to this forum because we need to build that foundation from early o'clock, considering the very turbulent times that we are in right now. So I want to take this opportunity to welcome and express our sincerest gratitude to our highly esteemed panelists, Mr. Marc Loquan, President of the National Gas Company since September of 2016. And I envision, Mr. Loquan, you're going to be a very famous guy, at least for the next few months to a couple years, given these turbulent times that we are going through, because Trinidad and Tobago traditionally has been an oil and gas economy, not so much oil now, but more prevalently gas. Professor Patrick Watson, Professor of Computer Science at the University of the West Indies, Mr. Tracy Hackshaw.
Sorry, Patrick Hosein, right? Hosein.
Yeah, you changed my name now, Joe. Yeah.
My apologies, sir. So it's Patrick Hosein, my apologies, right? Mr. Tracy Hackshaw, Chief Executive at TFH and Associates. And then someone I hold, and gentlemen, please don't be put off by this, but someone I hold very, very close to me, Dr. Earle, who, and I can say confidently, I can't say the same for the rest of you all, he is a past student of mine. So welcome, 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 gentlemen. As I said, to our Form 3 career session, and by extension, the St. Mary's College career session. So, as Brother rightfully said, this is not a presentation. This is for us to sit down and just have an informal discussion with one another to enlighten, to better inform our boys who are presently in Form 3, and in a few weeks' time, we'll be making that giant leap from Form 3 to Form 4 with respect to choice of subjects. And I can tell you guys, that is a giant leap because I was Dean of Form 3 for a number of years, and both parents and students alike feel intimidated, sometimes they feel very traumatized with respect to the volume of work that has to be done, and they're always wondering if they're going to qualify for their choice of subjects. Not only that, we have a number of Form 5 students who are presently in our session right now. And as you all are aware, CIC is knocking on the door, and our Form 5 students have to specialize. They have to whittle down 8 or 9 subjects into 3 specialized subjects for Form 6. And then not only that, we have our sons in Upper 6 who will be leaving the family of St. Mary's College in a few weeks' time to focus on their careers at university and or some equivalent. So Mark, Prof, Dr. and Tracy, thank you from the family of St. Mary's College for making the time to speak to our boys, and just as important, to speak to our parents about these monumental steps or these life changes they are going to take. So I will start off with Mark. And guys, I love putting you all on the spot, just like how I love to put my sons on the spot. So, Mark, I just shared with the wider audience the position that you hold. What I would like for you and the rest of you all to take you, what year you graduated from St. Mary's College? What subjects you did? And to me, this is really, really important, not only with respect to the academics, what other co-curricular, because I don't like to use that term extracurricular, what other co-curricular activities you got yourself in, and how did balancing these academic subjects together with your co-curricular activities made you the person that you are today?
Wow. So that's thank you for having me on this panel, Najil, and of course welcome and good afternoon to everybody. I would say for my own experience at Form 3, it was a choice of going down the science road or going down the more arts, geography, languages, literature type of subjects. And well, the latter category was clearly not my strength. So I was always attracted to the mathematics and physics and chemistry and so on. And so the subjects that were of interest to me, certainly I went down that track. There was a language that you had to learn. I wish I took it on more seriously at that point in time because at that time it was Spanish I had to do. And of course, as I went into the various activities, I wish I had that as a strength. So I would say that was where I ended up going through the sciences. I um, ended up doing chemical engineering, so that served well at UE. Um, but back to I would say the other activities that you asked about that kind of forged the person that I am. One was it used to be called the Duke of Edinburgh Award. I think it's now called the President's Award. But it was the first Trinidad Sea Scouts, and it was a time where there weren't as many cars on the road and things like that. But certainly we were riding from, first of all, you were hiking as a group, camping and kind of pitching tent in the middle of the bush, and finding your own food and cooking it and so on from the first camp, which was kind of um, something I never envisaged doing. Um, Being spoiled at home and getting food and nice 3 meals every day, and all of a sudden I'm put in the bush. Um, so that was one experience, and then of course the other thing is riding around Trinidad on a bicycle, and all of this was part of this first Trinidad Sea Scouts where you had to. This was a bronze, silver, gold medal at the time, and it was also involved like rowing from Kokorit to Shakashikari and back, camping with the Coast Guard and cleaning brass and exercising in the morning and things like that. So it was quite a broad experience, but you learn Trinidad and Tobago. You learned about teamwork. You learned about how to overcome some of the challenges, whether it's in the bush or whether it's you're tired physically, mentally, and how do you kind of persevere. So the scouting experience is one part, and of course the other part is I'll find myself playing the guitar for every concert. I think they used to have prefect concerts. I don't know if they still have it now, but it used to be prefect concerts, and I'll be the resident school guitarist for the Calypsonians and the various people participating then. Um, so I think that helped forge the musical side, and it also helped forge I guess, the character building side, which was important. And balancing all of that with the work was very difficult. I actually dropped out of Scouts at Form 4, but it was 4 intensive years of high activity every weekend. I hope that answered the question in a nutshell.
So, is it safe then to say I mean, because I'm using that operative word that you just used here, balancing. Is it safe to say that our students right now, they need to strike that balance of the co-curricular and the academics, and that will make them a better person?
Yeah, I think if you could do that, that is fine. I mean, it's the same thing when you go in the working world. Everybody is trying to find a balance between, the work and balancing all the things going on in life. So I think if you could achieve that, I'm still striving for that, you know. But I think if you can achieve that in a good way in all the various dimensions, family wise, work wise, exercise wise, I think that will be great.
Excellent. Well, I can safely tell you not only that not only do we have the first Trinidad Sea Scouts, we also have the sixth Trinidad Sea Scouts in St. Mary's College. And I mean, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the activities had to stop, but they are very, very vibrant. And I mean, they grow and we develop our boys. So thankfully, we are continuing in that same tradition. So just remind me, Mark, I have a question to ask you. I'm going to put you on the spot, like how Blaze has on the spot in rundown. I'm going to put you on the spot later this evening. So I'm asking the other panelists to remind me to ask Mark, because when I was doing some homework on Mark earlier this evening, I found something very, very interesting. And I want to put you on the spot. I'm not going to share any information or giving you any hints about that later today. So, Professor, let's hear your life in St. Mary's College. Tell us what subjects you did, because as I said, you're the professor of computer science at the University of West Indies. So take it away. Prof, your mic is muted.
Have a lot of background noise these days. So anyway, just like Mark, I decided to go with science because I was interested in science and math. So in Form 3, yeah, I think we had to do like 8 O-levels. And so it was mostly math and science. And then in Form 6, I stuck with mathematics, pure applied and physics. You have the usual thing where parents want to push you into medicine, etc. And I told my parents, look, I can't even stand the sight of blood. I could never make it as a doctor. So I told them, look, I will become a doctor, but not the medical type. So that's one thing, I would advise parents, different people have different interests. And you don't want your son to end up in a field that they are unhappy with in terms of being able to not being able to enjoy what they do. So I did physics. When I went off to university, I decided to stay in that area: mathematics, electronics, computer science, etc. In terms of co-curricular activities, I lived in a place called Crescent Gardens. It's Mousika. And even in those days, we had traffic problems. So my extra time was spent in traveling back and forth. So unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to participate in much extracurricular activities. I was in things like, I think at one time I was in gymnastics briefly. And I did take part in certain things, like we had a parang group that performed during the Christmas concert, etc. But yeah, that's one thing I regretted, not being able to participate in extracurricular activities. But I did make up for it when I went to university, and then that's where I took up music. My minor was in music. I learned to play the guitar. I started doing taekwondo and other things. So I made up for it there. Yeah, that's it. I forget what else you wanted to learn about us.
No, it's just we just gleaned in some information, but there's something I need to ask, because just like you, I'm an old boy. in St. Mary's College. Born and bred here 1991 to 1997. A little after you all graduated from St. Mary's College. But you said we did gymnastics in school?
Yeah, there was a time where I forget the guy's name, the teacher's name, but he got some equipment and we did some very basic stuff. I remember at one time, kind of doing some sort of flip and landing on my, on my neck and stuff like that. So it was dangerous in those days. But yeah, it was probably for a brief period. But I forget the name. I can remember his face, but I can't remember his name. Who did it? Yeah.
And you said that you did math in Form 6?
Yeah, in Form 6, I did pure math, applied math, and physics, as well as I guess GP.
Right.
I think probably got like a B in GP, but yeah. So those, because in those days I was interested in electronics. I was in the disco days with DJing and stuff like that. So I was interested in electronics, and so that's why I went in that path.
So if you don't mind me asking, who was your applied math teacher in Form 6? Father Lifehook?
I had Father Lifehook for pure math. I'm not sure for applied math whether I had Father Lifehook or was it Father Valdez. Okay. I forget. But yeah, I remember I had two very good teachers in those days for math. For physics, it was probably Valdez, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. And the reason why I'm saying this because I want the parents and the students to hear of the rich tradition that St. Mary's College has. And incidentally, Father Lifehook's name came up yesterday in our session where one of the panelists spoke very, very highly of Father Lifehook. I mean, I didn't do math, applied math in Form 6, but I knew of him. And my God, he is a legend. Really and truly, Father Lifehook is a legend.
I would say for sure I wouldn't be where I am today without Father Lifehook. He really, taught me a lot about enjoying mathematics and challenging myself. And so today, I mean, most of the work I do today is math-based stuff, and it's because of him, I would say.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor. Tracy, let's hear your story. Let's hear how you graduated from St. Mary's College and what you did and which teachers impacted on you. Let's hear your story.
Yeah, well, I had maybe a very different career path to Mark and Patrick. I started in St. Mary's in '84, and was one of the guys who skipped. Did a skip from 2 to 4. Ended up in the science stream. So teachers in those days, we had Lifehook and Valdez at Form 6, but at our level, we weren't so lucky. But we had, I think Buckmeyer is still teaching in school, yeah. So we had Buckmeyer at some point. I can't remember the chemistry teacher, Giona Ryan was her name, I think. We had Father Dick, of course, was teaching Spanish. We had a guy called Tinsley teaching French. Toba was doing RK, and Toba was doing the RK stuff. Physics, we had Supda was doing physics in our time. And in our days, we had a course called electricity. I don't know if you remember that. I think that's what the physics lab might be now, but we had electricity. We used to do that. Of course, we had initial computer studies, it wasn't called computer science. So I went through since, doing a skip, but after this, realizing when you skip, there's some challenges with skipping in some ways. So I think, when you reach in Form 5, you tend to be a little more, you're ahead of the game in one way, but also behind the curve in another way. So one of the things I found myself, guess, thinking about what my career path would have been. Of course, as Patrick would have said, that your parents tend to, put you in a particular box. You're going to be a doctor, engineer, something like that. But I didn't see myself doing that, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you look at it. And I actually left St. Mary's in '89 in Form 5. And I went to Polytechnic, a sixth form secondary. And that, although doing sciences, still there, did maths, biochem in Form 6. And took 2 years off to work. I actually went to work in AVM television, which was very different. I also wanted to work at a TV station. I grew up on Picton Street next to TDT, close to TDT. And as soon as I got a chance to work in media, I decided to go and do that. And that changed my life. And that whole, not just the work in a media environment, but also working right after Form 6. And when I went to university, I went to UE, I shifted gears into doing social sciences, believe it or not. So I went from pure science, maths, biochem, into social sciences. Got a first class honors degree there. And when I left, I actually started working in university at the time in the Psychological Research Center. I was doing sociology and psychology as my first set of career subject path, I'm gonna call it that. But all the while, I was a bit of a hobbyist, IT hobbyist, a computer science nerd in some ways. I had a computer when I was 10 years old, Apple IIe, started coding in BASIC, all behind the scenes. Nobody knew what I was doing. So I was doing that at home. And along the career path, I shifted gears into computer science and IT afterwards. So I guess one of the things I could say is that it wasn't accidental that I got into IT. It was always a hobby. It was always something I loved. But I had this, different set of experiences. So I started in science, went into the social sciences area, actually have a master's in business. So that rounded experience, I think, would help you in a career direction as you go forward in your life. In terms of co-curricular activities, I did a bit of what we used to call ground tennis back in those days in St. Mary. I don't know if we still have that. We would play ground tennis outside the hall because the smaller fellas couldn't play in the big yard. The big yard was for the the Form 5s and Form 6s. So the Form 1s and Form 2s had to play, find someone else to play. So we played ground tennis. And we also played cricket, but in the big yard, it's not there anymore. But when you had the basketball courts where they play cricket and so on the side where they used to do the fixing of the desks and by the bicycle rack, they squeezed us in there to play cricket. So we used to play some wind ball cricket and hit the ball into the big yard and get pelted by the Form 6 that pelt us. If we interrupt their game, we can't go into the big yard and pick up that ball until they finish do what they do. And if you get picked to play on their team, that was a big thing, man. You get picked to play on the Form 6s, come and play now, come and play and come and take a bat now, come and take a bat, come and take a vote. So that was one of the things we used to do. And one of the other things that we used to do back in our days, for those young people don't understand, we used to collect and exchange LPs, vinyl LPs. So one of the things we used to do was I don't know if you guys still have lockers. We used to, every day around Form 4, we'd bring our music to school. In our days it was things like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi and so on. You'd bring those LPs to school, and if you had, like a White Snake, you would exchange your White Snake with your partner who had a Def Leppard, or if you had YouTube, well, you were real cooking there. So music was a big thing for us, and collecting those LPs. And some of the LPs you still have from those days. You stole them from your partner. You never gave them back. They just have them from way back in the 80s. So that was pretty much my path. A very varied way to get into IT and computer science, and I've done pretty well so far. Patrick knows me. Patrick knows what I've been doing. So I got to meet Patrick. Actually, I met Patrick, believe it or not, first time in Cartagena, Colombia, of all places, in a conference. And since then, we've actually been, pretty close. And we sit on a board together and we do work together. So you end up, from wherever you are, you end in the direction that you have to be in. So one of the things I want to tell students is that, even though that it may seem like things are confusing and may not be, your path may not be really set yet, you're still thinking what you need to do. Don't worry, don't panic, don't, overthink it. Do the things that you love. Obviously set a career for yourself and try and understand where you want to go, but don't overly worry about it, because you may not end up where you think you would have ended up. I think that's important. So it's always good to do as well as you can in what you're doing now, because even if you're doing sciences now, you could end up doing business or psychology or accounts. Who knows what you might be doing later on in life. So keep that in mind. And I think that's some good advice I'd like to share at the moment.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And you'll be glad to know that lots of the stuff that you just spoke about, it still exists in St. Mary's College. I won't use the word steal, I'll say appropriate, right? That's a more politically correct word that we will use, right? So finally, Dr. Earle, Andre, right? And I have to consciously, I am pinching myself here to say I have to address Andre as Dr. Earle. So Dr. Earle, I want you to start off first, Andre, by telling us what year you graduated from St. Mary's College, because I want you to use that as to paint a picture of what you have done and continue to do in the front lines right now, because Andre is one of our frontline healthcare workers. So Dr. Earle, I hand over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Sampath. Good day, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. I really feel quite not intimidated, but humbled to be in the presence of such prominent figures in the field of science and technology. So what I will say is that, I graduated from St. Mary's in 2013, and during my time in St. Mary's, I think it might relate to a lot of the students now, because I don't think too many things may have changed from then to now. But it was only today when I was reflecting on the number of years that it has been, I'm not so confident anymore. But during my time there, I spent my years in forms 4, 5, and 6 really just focusing on science and mathematics. So just in terms of background, I had always been interested in sciences. Having similar to Tracy, gone in this accelerated classroom from Form 2 to Form 4. I think we didn't get exposed to a lot of business subjects at the time. And so sciences was, that was the way to go. Because of that, then I still wasn't sure whether my main interest would have been, biology or chemistry or physics or math. My father actually taught mathematics, not at CIC, but at QRC. So, there was this deep-seated guilt for not doing math and not going to QRC. But I really enjoyed my time there. And I was so undecided that I ended up just doing those 4 things all the way through, up until even the A levels or CAPE, where I did the physics and the math and the bio and the chemistry. And even after that, and applying to universities, I wasn't sure, whether it was civil engineering or medicine but something along those lines. I think at the time, what had happened was that I had gotten accepted into medical sciences at the University of the West Indies, but I still wasn't too sure if that's what I wanted to do. And I remember distinctly my mother having a conversation with me in my first semester there, saying, well, you started it, so you might as well finish. And I think I said, well, let's go do that then. Let's just do medicine. I remember reflecting that biology was my least favorite subject at the time. So a bit of irony there. But as per the St. Mary's culture, once you start something, we finish it. And I did finish. And having progressed through that journey, I will say that I was involved in a lot of co-curricular things in St. Mary's that had to do with public speaking and leadership type things. And that helped the transition to universities. So things like debate and scouts and some sporting activities, because in the university setting, I think it really made the St. Mary's graduates stand apart from the rest of the persons. And it made us take up prominent roles within the student community and within the university community. That said, having graduated from the university with that, I started my career as practicing medicine. And during that time, the pandemic hit about a year and a bit after. And when the pandemic hit, a lot of the doctors like myself who had recently graduated, weren't really in a subspecialty yet. We were called upon to help help serve on the front lines with the pandemic. So I became involved again in quite a few things. As per the St. Mary's, I would want you to be involved in a million things and still do your work. So with the ministry's hotline and collecting some data for the Pan American Health Organization, and then working in a number of COVID facilities throughout the entire pandemic, from Couva to Cora to Mount Hope, Arima, every COVID site, we were there. And then things started to settle down, I think, as we're all aware of. And so life returned to a semblance of normalcy. But now, I think even up until just before we began today, things seem to pick back up. So as we were starting here, I was checking some communiques from work there, and I think we're all going to go back into COVID to see how that goes. But I hope that answers your question.
Could you answer a question for me, Andre?
Sure.
You said biology wasn't one of your favorite subjects, right? Who was your biology teacher in Form 6? Well, you're not
I think, what did I have in Form 6, boy? I think I had, it was a blended learning thing. I think I had Mr. Martin. I remember Mr. Martin quite fondly. Right. And I think I had Miss Lala as well. I think it was the two of them. Yeah. And interestingly enough, earlier today, I mentioned your name, Mr. Sampath, talking about the effects of phenolphthalein on the human body.
All so right, I think you need to share that. We don't that's chemistry.
That was something that I remember quite fondly.
So thanks, Andre. And before I move on to the next segment, I just want to drive this home to our parents and to our students who are listening. St. Mary's College continues to produce leaders. You all seen our panelists here, and you must be thinking, wow, they're very unassuming. But I just want to share some information with you. Mr. Loquan, do you all know that he was the president of Yara International? I'm sure you all didn't know that. What about Professor, Principal Engineer at Huawei? I hope I pronounced that word correctly, and Ericsson. Tracy, Chief Futurist, Lead Catalyst at Enterprise Technology Consulting Services. And my own Andre, my dearest Andre, the first Trinidadian student to do an elective in general hematology and bone marrow transplantation at the University of Cardiff. So I need to drive this home. And this is the dean in me speaking to my parents and to my sons. St. Mary's College, we produce leaders. So now I am throwing out an open-ended question to anyone in the panel who would like to take it. We speak into our Form 4s. We speak into our Form 5s. We speak into our Form 3s. We speak into our Form 6 boys who will be going out there in this uncertain world. We're looking at careers or some sort of area that may have to be pandemic resistant. Tell me, guys, because these children we are speaking to right now, be it in Form 3, Form 4, Form 5, Form 6. What general tips would you give to these guys that they could take now and put it in your backpack and say, yes, this is what I'm going to use now? Anyone?
Well, I mean, I don't, we're just kind of continuing from where we left off, Mr. Sampath. I think one thing that really stuck with me throughout the entirety of this pandemic was something that we learned from St. Mary's, where once you know your basics, yep, so whether you want to do businesses or sciences or mathematics or whatever the case is, then once you're willing to work hard at your foundation and have a good foundation, regardless of what you decide to do, regardless of where you end up in terms of a field that maybe, as we're saying, pandemic resistant, or field that may be very much tried during these trying times. Once you have your basics with you, I think you'll be able to weather the storm.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, careers are going to be changing at a much faster rate than in the past. So be willing to adapt, be willing to continuously learn. Just recognize that things will be changing at a faster rate, and you have to be able to adapt. You can't stay in whichever mode you had in your particular mind at university.
Yeah, maybe I could say that persistence. So you have to have a level of persistence. So just in line with what Patrick and Andrea are saying, so you have to keep at it. Don't give up, even if you encounter some obstacles in your pathway. And then many times you feel like there's something in your way, or there's something that's deterring you. Don't panic. Take a deep breath. Always remember, this too shall pass, as they say, and persistence will always pay off. If you keep pushing at it and keep driving forward, you'll get where you need to go. Always forward motion. And sometimes failing is good. Sometimes, as they say in the Silicon Valley IT industry, fail fast. So, even if you fail, that's part of life. Nobody likes to fail, but it's part of life. But bear in mind that if you do fail, it's a lesson that you've learned. You take that lesson forward and do better the next time. Persistence pays off. Don't give up. And I think that's some of the things that, as young men, we encounter and we feel challenged, especially in these particular challenging times. Don't give up. It may seem like dark clouds are here, but there'll be a bright light right behind that. There's always sun after and coming out after the rain and after the thunderstorm. So keep that in mind. Always keep pushing forward.
Yeah, Mark, I'd like to build on a lot of the comments here. I think a lot of us find ourselves hiring young people. And certainly one of the things that we look at least for me, is attitude. And people who, I mean, the technical skills of the job, whether it's in, safety, or it's in projects, or it's in whatever subject, that can be transferred, that can be taught from people in the organization. But the attitude of people who, you're always looking for someone who would be willing to work as part of a team. You're always looking for someone who can demonstrate leadership, show initiative. They're always looking for someone who is always learning, who is always willing to transfer what they know to the other person, so that they could leave a place better than how they met it. So I think those are valuable lessons that, if you have that attitude of course, I take as a foundation the hard work that is required to be putting in any endeavor that you go down. And I would say even the path that you go down is not always fixed. It's difficult to see, as Tracy just said, it's difficult to see all the failures and disappointments, but where they lead. And I can't even count how many that I've personally gone through, but you can't see round the bend. And that's the problem. And the thing about it is those valuable life lessons and disappointments and feelings that really, if you have the attitude to pick yourself up and say, well, I can learn from this, and there's an opportunity here, as opposed to, well, the world is falling apart, and let me quit and let me just stop here. I think if you have that perseverance, as Tracy said, and willing to use that opportunity during those times. Sometimes it's dark, sometimes you find yourself in a place where I don't know where to go now, but really and truly speaking, as the years go by, you find, well, wait a minute, that experience was actually worth a lot to me. I didn't see it at the time, but I could see why, now, years later, that was beneficial to go through. So that is some of the core lessons.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. Before we continue, I want to remind parents and students alike to send in your questions. We will field the questions and direct it to our series of panelists here. So please send in your questions now, because we want to make it as interactive as possible. But I'm sitting down here and I'm listening to Tracy, I'm listening to Andre, I'm listening to Prof, I'm listening to Mark, and you could swear some kind of prepared script we have. You know why? Because the same things that you all speaking about is the same thing I will speak to my Form 1, Form 2, Form 4, Form 5, Form 6, right across the board. And Mark, you really hit the nail on the head. Attitude. Because as I told you all, I'm a Dean of Form 1. And if you all walk into my Form 1 wing right now, I have motivational stickers stuck up on the walls. And one of those stickers that I have stuck up there is your attitude. And sometimes when I have a son and a daughter, and sometimes when you tell them and you tell them and you tell them, but it just takes a stranger to come and tell them the same thing that you've been speaking to them about, and they listen to that person. So my sons who are listening right now, Mr. Sampat, not mad right now, really and truly. This is all good for us to sit down, to internalize, and use these uncertain times as opportunities. So, brother, I really and truly hope that you're recording this session, because you see that part there with attitude. I just want to pull that piece and I just want to drive it home with my students. But we need to use this as opportunities. If it wasn't for COVID-19, maybe we would have never even have considered a virtual career day. If it wasn't for COVID-19, maybe we would have never ever have considered a virtual orientation for Form 1. So parents and students, we need to view these as opportunities. And as Tracy rightly said, the sun will appear. The sun will appear. It's turbulent times that we are going through, but rest assured, we will get through it. So let's say, Prof, I come home by you now, and I physically take you and I plop you down in St. Mary's College in a Form 3 class. You're choosing subjects next week. What's the first thing that comes to your mind you're going to tell them?
Well, I have to think about that. But first of all, I would tell them, really see what is your passion. What do you want to spend the rest of your life doing? Because this is where you're going to make some of those decisions. Of course, you can make changes later on, as Tracy did, he changed and then changed back, etc. But this is the time where you need to prepare for the rest of your life in terms of career-wise. So really think about what you really want to do. And I know some younger, some students at this age have no clue what they want to do. But as long as they choose subjects that they are interested in, that they are would be, have this passion to work in that area, then I would go along with that. Now, there's always this conflict of, I want to make big money, right? And if I want to make big money, I need to be a lawyer, I need to be this, that. I would avoid going down that path, because yeah, you may end up with the money, but you won't end up with the happiness, the satisfaction that you crave. And then, of course, there's the issue with, pressure from parents trying to push them in certain areas. And I had that same, that's how we were brought up. So when my daughter, for instance, when she was choosing a high school, she was very good in science and math, and she decided she wanted to go to a school that specialized in music. And I said, well, why? She said, well, I'm good at science and math, but I want to enjoy it. And she went to music, and she has a career. She won't make millions, but she's enjoying her life. And so, I think that is what parents need to think about. It's the students' lives. Let them decide what they want to do with some guidance, of course. So yeah, that's you wouldn't talk about specific topic subjects, but let them think about what they want to do in life, and then you go from there.
So as a parent, and I want you to be brutally honest with us. When your daughter initially came to you and said, Dad, not math and science, music, what was your first reaction?
I tried to persuade her to change her mind, but she was the one to convince me that, look, she won't be happy unless she did this. So what I eventually was able to get out of her, I said, look, okay, and this was for high school, and I said, well, okay, but once you go to university, at least have a backup. So when she went to university, she got a degree in music, but she also got a degree in music business.
Okay.
So if necessary, she could fall back and do something in business. But yeah, I would say, yeah, have a backup plan just in case things don't turn out. But in my say similar with my son, he wasn't interested in my type of career, and he branched off into something else, and then he switched back into engineering as well. So it takes time. Sometimes students have to try different things to see what they're really passionate about. But in the end, yeah, they should follow that.
Thank you. So Andre, you said you were in the thick of things and you decided to complete it. Why?
Now that's a good question. I suppose I remember relating it to when I had to choose a language. So I think I was with the year that you no longer had to choose a language to do for O levels, and I remember my parents still saying, with the influence that they wield, saying that, but I think you should still do a language. I highly suggest you do a language regardless. It pairs well with sciences. And I remember I was not a fan of any language besides English or science. But I remember I still think I went ahead with French, and I was horrible, really, really bad. Didn't understand the grammar, didn't learn the vocabulary, was really, really bad at it. Up until Form 5, when I realized that exams were around the corner and I could either sit down and study my work or fail the test. And I think I decided to go with the former. And I remember that it's in deciding to dedicate myself not so much to how I felt, but to just the principle of doing the work, that made me not only enjoy the subject or come to have an appreciation for it in some way, but also to be fairly competent at it. When I began medicine, I was still really undecided as to whether that's what I wanted to do for my foreseeable future, or with something else in the field of something science related. I remember that decision that I had made with French, and I thought, well, let's apply the same principle. Let's apply the same principle of putting your head down and pushing through, and just see where the hard work will take you. And thus far, I don't have any regrets.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, I must admit, gentlemen, there must be some higher being at work right now, because I'm feeding off you all, and I'm glad that Andre, you mentioned the languages. Because Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot now. when I was doing my research on you, it says that you have a limited working proficiency in Portuguese. So, care to tell us about that? Care to tell our students, or has it at all, the idea of an additional language, has it benefited you at all whatsoever?
Well, I guess in my particular case, you know, after 27 years in the industry, I found myself being posted as a representative of the company I was working for as its first employee in Angola. And the reason why Angola was actually at the time booming in oil and gas, and they were bringing gas into from offshore to onshore, and they were building plants in the same company or same field that my company was producing. So I was sent there, and of course that was Portuguese, um, and it's a Portuguese colony. So from the time you land in the airport, unlike say countries like Sweden, Scandinavia, and so on, where everyone speaks multiple languages. And of course, if you land there, they speak English with you. In the case of Angola, from the time you land, it's Portuguese. And that's all you hear. And that's how you have to get in a car, get transport, everything, pay money, so on. So it actually forced me. I went to learn the language just before I went there, but it was only some months.
Mhm.
But landing there, living there for a few years, I was forced to speak it as clumsily as I could, um, and interact at very senior levels in government as well as on the street, you know. But I think it proved useful to demonstrate in that particular assignment that it is not always how good you speak it, but it was showing an interest and attitude to learn the language and to actually try to of course the people that I was meeting, they could also speak English, but you know what, they much prefer to talk their natural language, and I think that was where I was forced to learn Portuguese. I don't speak a word of it now, but because that was some years ago, so don't ask me, but at least it was that's where I wish I had the Spanish language from um, St. Mary's, because the Spanish and Portuguese is very, very close, you know. So I was probably talking what you call um, Portanol, or it's like it's a mixture of Spanish words that you learned in school and the Portuguese language, but they understand you, you know. Um, but I think that's where it comes in handy. And of course, as you start to move more and more in the global environment, depending on where you go, for me, I've been posted in several parts of the world, but it's important. Like even in my own job here, we've been doing, you know, before all the sanctions came along with Venezuela, there was a lot of gas discussions and meetings going on in Venezuela, and I just wish, obviously when I landed there, it was a lot of that came back to me.
Mhm.
Uh, but I just wish I had a much more solid grounding so you could, understand some of the conversations. But yeah, it was change, it was forced change, it was uncertainty, and it was living, and you're by yourself. I was by myself, forming a company, doing different things. So it's about also, yeah, I guess being willing to face whatever challenges come along. But it does boil down to attitude. I have to confess, there were many times when I said to myself, what am I doing here? How did I end up here? I really need to kind of get out of here and quit. My family was somewhere else. I was in Angola. I had to set up a company. Like start from scratch. Um, and that's how it was, but I think at the end of the day, that experience, as I mentioned before, when you look at the gas business and how things are now working all over the world, the LNG that they have there, I cannot relate to some of the stories that's going on in the energy world and how that's impacting the globe. So I would say coming out of the experience is one, have a global mindset in whatever you do. And if you can learn a language, I would strongly encourage it, only because yeah, you may need it as you go on.
Mhm.
I never imagined that, but there it was.
I really and truly hope Brevard recording this. They have a language because this is something that, and as you said, it's a global village that we live in right now. So we can't pigeonhole ourselves into one particular area. So, Mark, that wasn't a question. Still, I still have a question to put you on the spot. I'm just going to use it later on today. So, right, you must be wondering, what is it Nigel want to talk to you all about, right? Tracy, I want you to paint me a picture here because I'm sitting down and I'm listening to you. You said you started off sciences in high school and then you branched off into information technology at the university level. Paint me a typical picture, the demands of a day in your life.
Well, that's a that's a very difficult question to answer because every day is a different story. Because right now I'm doing some work with the Ministry of Health as an example, and on their work on the vaccination side of it, the IT solution. So it's a very challenging time right now, given everything. But a typical day would be one where you are in this world of technology. It has two sides of it really. It has an entrepreneurial side, I would call it. Maybe that's one way to look at it. You're looking for new um, areas of what to do next, where things are going. You are, catching up on what Elon Musk is doing and what those guys what's happening with SpaceX, what's happening with Tesla, what's going on with cryptocurrency, all those things that, that may seem like not very far from what be happening in your own part of the world. And then the other side, you're actually doing the day-to-day job of solving problems for clients, right? So a client is, a government ministry. At one time, I noticed you mentioned my chief futurist hat, but I also wore the national chief information officer hat. That in that role, I served as basically the CIO for the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and in solving the public service challenges of digital transformation, that you wake up every morning trying to figure out how can I make life easier, not just for the public servants who are working, but also for the citizens who are trying to access government services. And if you could just put your mind on that for a second, that's a huge burden to wear, trying to understand how to deal with something like that. So solving problems both for your clients as well as even for your own business and your own way forward is really what a day looks like. In terms of using new technology, so trying to pivot into this discussion about the technology, I would say that my day starts with literally turning on my laptop or my tablet or my phone, obviously checking your messages and your mail, and then trying to plan out what you're going to do in an organized fashion. So you can't really take a typical day as somebody, I'm not necessarily an employee, I'm running a business, but on the other hand, I'm also serving clients, I'm also doing that kind of work. So you can't really take a day as standard, here are the tasks that you do and here are the things that people want you to do and so on. You're always trying to organize a whole host of requests. You're firefighting a lot. And at the end of the day, as I said, you're trying to solve problems. So I utilize technological tools to do that. So I actually, eat my own dog food, as I say, or drink my own champagne. So instead of, throwing up your hands and say, oh my God, this is so good. There's a lot of stuff to do. I use various tools that are available to me. I'm not going through that in this call, and I organize my work, set my targets for the day, for the week, for the month, and work towards achieving them. As I said before, you're driving forward. I always try to drive forward. So a typical day is really trying to see what you're trying to achieve at the end of that day and work towards achieving what you're trying to do at the end of that day. It literally is that. It's about that. As the whole pandemic thing has come into play now, most of our stuff has moved online, as you know, and you're now juggling. Like I was just on a call before this, now another call now, and I will be on a call after this. As you go more online, people seem to think that you can do more of these calls, and your time is no longer your own. So you're having less alone time and less downtime, and more time with the computer, time with the tablet, time with the PC. So I would want to encourage everyone to be aware of that's a new direction we're heading. This is online, and trying to organize your life, separate your life from doing things that are not necessarily on a computer, but trying to take your eyes off the screen for a moment, and if you can, if you don't want to read a book, listen to a book. I listen to audiobooks now, because you get older, it's harder to read books, but listening to books is a great idea. And as I prefer to do that than watching movies as far as I can, so I listen to audiobooks or podcasts. So I spend my downtime now, after the session, I will go in my car and I will throw on a podcast or throw on an audiobook. And when I drive home, well, hopefully there'll be no traffic given everything that's going on, I will listen to what's happening in the latest, what's going on in the world in terms of technology, and put what I've learned maybe in that podcast or in that book I'm reading to work the next day. Because you may have learned something new. There's always new learning. I always drive to find new learning, new ideas, new thinking, and try and apply those thoughts and those ideas in your next day or your next week or your next month. So summarizing, understanding what you need to do for that day to solve your problems. Look at your targets, try and hit your targets, and at the end of your work day, quote unquote, use your downtime to learn something new. Take a rest, rest your eyes, rest your mind, but always keep learning, always keep trying to understand, what you can do next. Because I think that keeps you really on your toes. It keeps you, you don't get bored, and you're always thinking of what to do next. Keep your brain active, keep that brain moving, and not get it too muddy and too murky with other things.
So that is an easy question, and I'm sure the rest of the panelists here could connect to that, could share those experiences. So gentlemen, I'm throwing this out to all of you. We have similarities with what Tracy is going through every day in his life. What experience or what experiences from St. Mary's College, from being here in the school in Frederick Street, downtown Port of Spain, what experiences in St. Mary's College has allowed for you to handle a typical day in your life? Anybody? Ooh, I tell you guys, I love to ask hard questions,
I think at least for me, there's an early start for medicine, no matter what kind of medicine you do, whether it's a surgical thing, an internal medicine type of thing, whether you're in a hospital, whether you're in a private clinic, whether you're on a frontline work on the pandemic. It's always an early start to the day, and it's always a long day. And what I will say, I think St. Mary's kind of instills that in you, I think a lot of the panelists mentioned they may have come from very far in order to be able to get to St. Mary's, and myself included. I mean, I live in Arima, while I went to St. Mary's. And so it would mean, waking up before the sun came up and reaching. I think that served in good stead for any intense career. And I think that might be the main thing for me.
Mark? Prof?
Well, I think
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, go
sorry.
no, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was gonna say that I think there was a certain value system that was also imprinted on you in St. Mary's, and certainly at the time, and I'm talking, well, I don't want to talk the years because you'll realize how many decades have gone by, but certainly there was a instilling of discipline for hard work. There was a instilling of um, sort of, it was healthy competition. It wasn't like bad competition going on, but it was always like having a network of people that you were um, not by yourself, and you will always kind of. For me, I had great teachers as well. You know, Roy Chonkit. I don't know if you know that name, but he was a 14-year-old who had won the Journeyman gold medal twice. And I don't think we say Journeyman gold medal anymore. I think we say President's Award or something. But I think those kind of values pervade into whatever you do, where you strive to work hard, you build a network of people, and those are skills. And the scouts also did that for me as well. You know how to sort of go through these hurdles, set the small goals, and keep going. And no matter what career you choose or how you decide to live your life. I think one of the I guess extensions of that is when you get into the working world, it's not all about the results either. And at least for me, it's about the journey as well. It's about how you got there. And that is also about the value part that you brought from home, from what your parents instilled in you, as well as from your environment in school, where there was certainly one where you were supposed to do things in out of hard work, essentially. And there was not a lot of shortcuts that otherwise you would pay for it. um, so I would say the focus on values, teamwork, and basically perseverance and resilience and hard work was certainly things that I picked up, um, that I try to carry through in the working environment.
Professor?
Yeah, well, I think what I learned most of all is challenging myself, and coming back to Father Lightfoot, for instance. He used to give us these challenging math questions and ask us to solve them. And he was a great mathematician, and so it was really helpful learning from him. I recall one time he gave us this question in trigonometry, I believe, and he expected a certain answer. So I solved it quickly, and he passed around looking at everybody's solution. He came to mine, and with his rough tone, he said, "Wrong, wrong." And he walked back up towards his table, and then he stopped suddenly. He turned around and smiled, and he said, "Yes, that is correct." So that instilled in me the attitude to really challenge myself, find problems that would be challenging. And up to today, I mean, a lot of the work I do is taking problems in optimization, data science, operations research, and taking the real world practical problem and converting it to a problem that could be solved, using a mathematical tool or technique or AI or whatever. And that conversion from a real world problem to a mathematical problem, that challenge, that's the biggest challenge. The rest of it is straightforward. The AI tools you would use, sort of standard. But that is what I find challenging. And unfortunately, that is where a lot of these students we have these days have a difficulty doing that. So when they go out into industry, they have the academic tools to solve problems, but they can't take the real world problems and convert it into something that they could apply the academic tools. And then they have to take that solution, that academic solution, and convert it back into a business, in terms of a business perspective where the managers could see the benefit of that solution. I think, yeah, so well, it's not only at St. Mary's I learned this, but I think that's where it started, by having that challenging types of questions that Father Lightfoot would give us.
Thank you very much, Professor. So, gentlemen, because I have it here written down, and Mark mentioned it just now, how important is networking? You all tell me, in terms of meeting past colleagues or staying in contact with colleagues, because Tracy and Prof, you all met each other in what, Cartagena, and look at it now. So how important is networking?
Maybe I could, I could say that networking at physical networking, so your friends from school and from university, many of the friends that you've met, they are the same friends you might even have today, so those people that you would have met there at that first stage of your education are the people that you encounter. In some cases, you might encounter them as potential employers, or people who can actually hand a job to you. So if you're an entrepreneur and they recommend, I know John Doe, and John Doe knows an opportunity, he can recommend things to you, that I know this guy Tracy, or I know Patrick, and pass those on. So they're very important from that standpoint. But beyond your close networks that you build at schools, whether it be secondary or university, it's very important, I think, for those networks to mushroom beyond that. Without sounding like cliche, the social networks that currently exist, maybe not the Facebook and so on. I'm referring here to things like LinkedIn, and those are the platforms that currently provide business-to-business networking, are extremely important. And many of the opportunities that I have or have had recently through the areas where, for example, I met Patrick through an organization called ICANN, which is a global technology organization, and attending conferences. Those things are really rooted in the online world, so you find and you meet people who almost only see you online at the start, and you may only see them physically once or twice or 3 times a year, if at all. And that networking that is going on now, especially in that world, has become, if not equally as important, certainly very close to being equally as important to your physical friends and business relationships you currently have. You find yourself, again, using this always growing thinking, always having to be close to that network, because if you don't continue growing in that way and trying to understand what's happening in the world, you're going to, especially now, you're going to really shrivel up into like a little pocket, a little bubble of what's going on in your area, your Tobago, or your town, or even your industry. So it's good to understand what's going on outside of that world, and the networks help expand that knowledge even more than reading and doing research. Because in chatting and talking, and when I say chatting, I mean actually chatting with colleagues, having calls if necessary, sharing, and again, the case like Patrick, you may be sharing papers and sharing academic papers with colleagues. You find that knowledge that you're building, that knowledge base that you build, grows you as an individual, grows your network, and grows your reputation, which I think is probably the more important thing at the end of the day. So that when you are looking for a job, if you're so inclined to be employed, or you're attempting to build your business network as an entrepreneur, you don't, something called a pipeline, for those who are familiar with the business jargon. To get that pipeline to be full, you need to be fully networked with not just your friends and your university colleagues, but certainly network with business colleagues and anybody who is new. You reach out to them, and I have found quite recently, especially given everything now with the pandemic, many people are much more open to network openly. It's called open networking, quite literally, from anywhere around the world. Once they see you as a someone in a particular area. Let's have a chat about this particular topic, and reach out to you. Let's do a call and let's have a chat, share some ideas. And those things could turn into opportunities and business and even jobs if you're looking for employment.
Yeah, let me add to that, to what Tracy. I mean, Tracy is much better than I am with respect to networking, because you need to have that that social nature to do it. But yeah, no, network is important. In my younger days, the research I did it mostly on my own, so I didn't really need to network that much. But today, the type of research that we need to do to benefit society, etc., requires interdisciplinary research. So when you talk about things like AI and 5G and IoT, etc., it really requires you to work with others and work with others in other disciplines. So for instance, we do work with people in health, in law, in economics, etc. And in order to be able to work well with such individuals, you need to network with them, you need to get to know them, and you need to be able, and this is something I try to develop in my students, be able to network in such a way, or collaborate in such a way that you extract value from them and they extract value from you, without seeming to be arrogant and saying, oh, well, we know what is best, right? And so that all comes about by having the social interaction, by networking, etc.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mark, I would like to say some words on that if I can.
Of course.
I think some of the biggest issues I've seen in how many decades of work in the working world is that people gravitate to working in silos for some reason. And it's, a lot of the time and attention is being placed in companies to try to change all of that, to try to create cross-functional teams, to try to change people's mindsets with all kinds of leadership training and so on, that will help the leaders build their teams in a certain way. And of course, you find yourself in most processes, in most companies, unless you're in a research lab, behind a microscope working by yourself. If you're working in the normal world, you must be networking with someone, right? You're always trying to solve or improve some process that involves more than just what you do. And I think once you have a disposition that says, I need to work with others in my own team to try and get better results, or I need to work with people outside of my department to get a better result for the company. And here some things going on. I don't know why it is so difficult and it is so normal to find that people are continuing to work in silos, and part of a CEO's job, like what I have to do, is break it down. I mean, what confuses networking is structure. So you may have a company, like you have HR, you have finance, you have operations, you have marketing, etc., commercial, and the company is running with all these functions, and the people in those departments or divisions, or however you want to call them, tend to develop this, I don't know what it is, but it's like, um, I'm only working in my own area, kind of, you fend for yourself, do your own stuff. And what I'm saying is that is a culture. The cultural change in many companies is trying to change all of that. And therefore, this is where the networking skills come in. This is where the teamwork comes in. This is where solving problems together comes in. And you will find that most times, 99% of the times, if you work together, you'll get a much better result than if you try to do it alone, or it take a lot longer to try and get a better result. So that's a kind of going back to one of the daily things you asked, what does a CEO do? What do I do in my daily work? And it's really quite apart from setting direction. It is building a culture where you are sharing knowledge, where you're learning from each other, where you're solving problems together, as complicated as they may be. Whether it is battling through COVID right now and how we kind of keep all the employees working from home, or it's various people involved even to get that working well. In the case of the gas company, is keeping lights on as well, keeping TNTech going, keeping all the customers, satisfied with gas still during COVID. So I can't stress enough the getting back to the attitude issue, the attitude of working with other people and having some kind of, well, emotional intelligence as well, not only brains and brilliance, but also the emotional intelligence to work with other people in a certain way, sense what's going on, sense the changes that are happening. And yeah, that is really the kind of skills and parameters that attracts me to people. I mean, there are people who are clearly like that. There's no even not an issue, and there are people who are clearly on the other side. That it's like leave me alone. I'll work by myself. Um, and that is really a challenge that most companies are dealing with through team building sessions and all kinds of things that you're doing, right? Um, and it's better to start with the minds being recruited from very early on how they think and so on. So even our recruitment processes have changed. It's no longer just an interview that says, well, what did you do, and it's also giving you a business case and seeing how you actually will think and how you think. And I think that is differentiating you know the people getting the jobs or not.
Mhm. Excellent advice. So, Mark, I have a question for you. Because as you are aware, we are at home right now with respect to the online classes. What advice will you give to mommy and daddy at home right now to build on that networking, as you say, to sit with their sons or to sit with their daughters? Because right now, mommy and daddy, they play an even more pivotal role with respect to the educational journey. What advice would you give to mommy and daddy right now who are listening?
Well, if you um, I guess listen to clinical psychologists at this point in time, and part of the culture building that we've had at the company is bringing in such expertise to talk to parents and people in the company. And some of the things that they say is that they see a lot of issues appearing now. They're seeing a lot of issues in terms of family life and relationships and depression and anxiety and so on. And I think part of the issues, that the advice that was given, is that it is okay to have some me time at a time like this. And that applies not only to parents, it also applies to children, right? And also it is, first of all, things have to start with yourself and finding a proper balance with yourself, and a proper balance with, the family and even outside. And if you can kind of get those things right, the other thing is the I guess the irony is that at before COVID, we would tell our children, stay away from all them computers and phones, and you're there 24 hours. And here we are now. Well, I expect you to be there on the computer and the phone, 8 hours a day. So really and truly speaking, I think there's an understanding that's required. And the best thing is, of course, to get your routines in a way that is, established, as well as even the space and how everybody's at home in the same space, and people are finding all different ways to cope. But I would say there's an understanding that's required to build family time, and understand the changes going on. And the mental health, or at this time, is also an area where, you know, we've had to provide support, you know, where it's, you know, to get access to services, or, you know, people who are going through the same kinds of issues, and, you know, understand um, anxiety and depression and all of these things that you see as symptoms when you get pandemic fatigue, when you kind of get cabin fever, and you want to go out and you can't go out anywhere. um, I mean, that it's an understanding that's required. It is a journey that we're all going through. It's not to say we are experts in all of this. Everybody is kind of learning at the, you know, in this world, but it does require, I think, a greater understanding that we've had before. And the things that we used to apply in the past are not necessarily the same things here. But you have to get the work done. You have to, you know, manage your own, as parents, your world, and your children's world in terms of schooling and online. Um, and I've heard this story so many times talking to employees that the parents are becoming the teachers. You know, they do the homework. There's a lot more pressure on the parents at this time. So even in how I relate to employees, um, you know, a lot of the times when we're having these virtual conversations, as we do every day now, it's not only about the work. It's about, you know, how you're coping. It's about um, trying to get that personal pulse all the time.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I must say mental health is really and truly most important. And I need to share this with you all because St. Mary's College, and I feel very proud in saying this also, St. Mary's College, we are partnered with about 14 other schools throughout the country where we having a virtual race where we challenging our students and we challenging our parents to partake in a virtual race as that sort of coping mechanism. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our panelists because I see the questions are coming in and you have been answering the questions, but I have a particular question for Andre. So Andre, let's say it was a typical year, we in 2021, and I graduated from St. Mary's College July 2021. I applied for med school. Will I get in for med school in 2021 or will I have to wait? That's one. And the year that I get in, how long does it take to complete my training?
Okay, so that's a good question, and it's one that is really relevant now. So what's been happening with a lot of new medical students, I can speak with certainty for the ones for the University of the West Indies. What's been happening is that for our year one students who just come in, who would have been recent graduates from secondary school, they applied, let's say around now, they may have graduated around the middle of the year, so let's say July, and then they would begin their semester in September. Now, a lot of their classes are online. And unlike, I think, with secondary school, which is what they're trying to do with the blended learning, where you have your lab work, you come in person for, and some of the things are done online. I think for a lot of medical schools, not just University of the West Indies, but around the world as well, I think they're trying to make it so that for your younger years, your new students, everything is online, because a lot of the groundwork really is just learning the theory, you know, so learning the anatomy and the biochemistry and the physiology and those types of things. So the reality is that it is very reasonable to expect for someone to graduate in July of 2021 and to begin their first year of medical school in September of 2021, provided that the environment may not change that much. It's still on the computer interface. Now, that's mainly for the University of the West Indies and a lot of the universities in the UK. I can't speak for the ones in the US. I'm not too familiar with their system, but I can confirm that's what's happening in those systems, because the Caribbean system tends to follow the British system a lot. In terms of if, let's say, a student wanted to do a deferral in terms of when they wanted to start medical school. That's an option a lot of candidates are thinking about, and I've fielded questions about recently where persons would say, okay, well, let's say if the vaccines around the world come on board and things return to this new normal, is it that, I can actually fly abroad and begin my studies at this university? And some universities are giving students that choice as well, where they say, well, if you wanted to defer your acceptance to begin in 2022, 2023, and then we can guarantee you a spot. And then maybe even if you want to do your first year online from your own country and then fly out after, provided that the opportunity is there as well. In terms of the duration, they, again, only being able to speak for both the US and the UK systems, the time periods are a bit different. In the UK system, as well as the Caribbean system, you can go directly from a secondary school system and directly into medical school, provided you have certain advanced level qualifications, which would be A levels or CAPE for our setting. We will be accepted into, we may be accepted into the University of the West Indies in their Faculty of Medical Sciences and out of the universities in the UK. If you do want to go to a university in the UK, there are equivalency exams, which aren't very, very difficult. Yes, they do require a bit of work just in terms of preparing for the examination itself, but the foundation knowledge is the same. And in a lot of cases, our candidates who do the CAPE examinations are actually over-prepared for those types of entry-level examinations. So I do think it serves a lot of candidates in good stead. For the US system, I don't know if Form 6 is the most relevant, because in addition to writing your SATs, your SAT 1, your SAT 2s, those would enable you to be able to enter into their undergraduate program, so their bachelor's. And it's only with that first degree in pre-med or whatever groups of majors that make up their pre-med system, then you would be able to apply to their medical schools. So the time frame for the UK style of medical schooling is about 5 years, and for the US style of medical schooling is about 3 to 4 years for your undergraduate, and then 4 years of medical school itself. So that adds up to about 7 to 8 years.
Thank you very much. So, gentlemen, we've been talking about networking, we've been talking about attitude, we've been talking about mental health, we're talking about coping mechanisms. Let's lighten the mood a little bit. What's your most memorable sales story? Good. I've seen thinking caps come on already there. There's so many to pick from. What's your most memorable sales story? Anyone? Let me hear you all. This should be interesting. And just remember, it needs to be kosher.
Everything. I think that's a difficult part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. We can't talk about the Charlie's wine and things like that then.
What do you free to share with us?
I think at least for me, I think the most memorable part that is fit for public consumption is the assemblies in the hall, that no matter what was going on, whether it was the middle of class, the start of class, even in an exam sometimes, that if, over the intercom, you hear the announcement for all the boys to gather in the hall for a pre-intercall assembly, and the school was going to do the brass, and the band came out, and the football team came out. That was fantastic. 10 out of 10 every single time. Remember, that was the highlights of the month, especially when intercall season came around. That was great.
Excellent. Wow. Tracy?
Yeah, I think my favorite time in Saints was, for those who know the time that we were there, which was I was there in the mid to late 80s. Our intercall and football team was pretty much the talk of the town. We had Shaka, Hislop, and the Rock Brothers and the Mose Brothers and so on. We won intercall, we won the league. We were in the stadium. The stadium was full. Razataz was the thing of the day. I don't know if you guys still do Razat at matches, but we had Tassa, we had drums. It was a big lime. All the convent, Holy Name Convent, and the come to the matches. Yeah, it was the biggest lime out 30,000 people in the stadium, all school children, literally watching matches, having a good time, watching Saints beat up on Fatima, beat up on KRC, mash up John D, mash up Sandotech. Yeah, those are the great times. I remember that. I have fond memories of those times. As a younger, because I was in Form 1, Form 2, I guess, around those times, and yeah, I really got into that area of football and intercall, and that was just before strike squad came into force. So we had all of that moving in Saints. I think that was my favorite time in Saints, and just generally many of the friends that you made there. You know that we still have WhatsApp groups with our alumni, you know, from our time, and we still will talk and, you know, beat up on each other and stuff you say there in that chat group you can't say here. But but it's like almost like you transport yourself back to, you know, back to class, back to, you know, linemen in the corridors and getting tapping up people on the corridors. But we get haircuts and get tapped. One of the best experiences I've ever had, I don't know if this is a good thing to say, is that when you were, you know, Form 1 and Form 2, is to get tap up, you know, when you get a haircut. But what will happen next is when you go to Form 4, then you become the tapper, not the tappy. So we used to line up on the corridor and do exactly what you get when you got your first haircut. We would start tapping up all the boys, you know. I don't know if that still happens in Saints, so that was a nice rite of passage, tapping.
We call it friendly nudges.
And for those who remember the Meggies, you remember Meggies? Remember Meggies?
Oh my God.
A lot of Meggies in those days, yeah, Meggies, and all the Meggies. Oh!
And getting healed as well.
What about the tunnel? You ever found the tunnel under the school? The tunnel to convent?
I remember those stories. But is it true? Did that tunnel exist at some point?
Well, we firmly believe there's a tunnel still, and we don't know how. But I think up to this day, maybe Najali can tell us, confirm that there is a tunnel to convent. Yeah?
Well, when we finish at 6 o'clock, I will share that. Right? I can't divulge that information right now. Patrick, what about you, sir?
Well, yeah, similar type. You know, most of my good experiences were outside of St. Mary's with St. Mary's friends, of course. You know, going to different fetes and you know, usually doing the usual stuff at that age. You know, the little smoking and things like that. But I have a recent memory that, you know, one thing I'm very, very proud about is you know, invited to be in the Hall of Fame. And so about 3 years ago, I came to St. Mary's to collect tickets for the Carnival Fete. And I walked into the Centenary Hall and I was able to look up and see my picture there and see people like Father Lightfoot, etc. So that was tremendous for me.
Wow, Patrick, my paw's raising right now here, you know. Just to hear you say that, right? Mark.
I had some good memories and bad memories. I don't know which one to say, but you know, the Father Lifer could go around and spank people. You know, if put in your foot up on the concrete and the paint and thing, you know. And I remember getting a good one from him. Clearly, that was not a particularly good memory, but you know, when you look back on it now, you can laugh and think, you know. But clearly, he used to do that to many people. But other than that, it was a lot of the you know, the music classes. You know, I used to hate music in St. Mary's, right? I just couldn't stand it. So as the teacher went out, you know, I'll go get on the piano and start to play, you know, Elton John, you know, Billy Joel, various things, and then the teacher would come back in, and then you have to kind of stand up straight again. You know, it was all these kind of moments, but and it was all the concerts that we had every year, and you know, I used to love those.
So that must have been Mrs. Rich, right? You know, in your time.
Yes, that's right. It was India.
Yeah.
Who I'm good friends with now.
Okay, nice to know she's still around. Yeah, I was in the choir for a while as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bit too rigid. Yes.
If I have to share that with you, I was in Form 1 also in 1991. and I was trying out for the choir, and then she just pulled me aside and she said, try something else now. Don't try the choir.
Oh, me.
I don't think that cut out for you, son. Right? So, so yes, lots and lots and lots of memories. Now, if your kid, I mean, we're hearing about father life food. If your kid gave me a teacher, and I don't like to use the term teacher, right? Because to me, teacher is just delivery of the curriculum. I don't call myself a teacher. I call myself an educator. And Andre could tell you that because I educated him about the effects of phenolphthalein on the human body, right? So, which educator from St. Mary's College really has stuck with you? What he did or what she did, right? The pat on the shoulder, or just standing up quiet next to you, or just that particular topic that you didn't get, but that teacher delivered it and you got it. Which educator really and truly, in the blink of an eye, you could give me a name now and why?
I think for me, it's an English teacher. I think it's Miss James was her name, and she had asked me some question in class, and Lord knows I didn't know the answer, but I waffled my heart out for maybe 3 to 5 minutes. I just waffled, and at the end of it, I think she had said, as Master Earle, I think he used to address as my master because it wasn't Mr. yet, Master Earle, with all of your verbosity, you've said nothing. And I remember that just kind of that ringing real true to me, because I knew that was the truth. And then going forward, in the rest of my career, even up until today, I remember thinking, if I really don't have anything to say, maybe it's best that sometimes it's best to say less where less is more there. And I think so that was a poignant piece of advice that stayed true with me until today.
Very good. And she's still here, Andre.
There we go. Well, Miss James, hello.
Tracy?
Yeah, that's a far back memory, but wow, to try and think of who.
Now, gentlemen, notice I did not tell the audience what years you all graduated from St. Mary's College. I only spoke about Andre. I will not share that the year that someone graduated from St. Mary's College was the year I was born. So of course I will not share that information. So I gave you a little time there to think about it. So yeah, Tracy, Mark, Patrick. Yeah.
I have to mention two people. No, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the teacher name right, but I can see his face. But certainly in my form 3, there was a Mr. Gajada or Gajraj or something like that. I think, but it was a G. And that memory stays with me because I think he was pivotal from the point that I really used to fail maths in a disastrous way in Form 1 and Form 2, and I really it was I'll always be 35th out of 36 or something like that, right, in Form 1 and Form 2. But in Form 3, for some reason, this guy somehow he didn't teach me maths. He basically allowed me to explore the subject in a way that I would do it. And solve the problems, which I turned out, well, I could do this after all, and this subject I kept failing in Form 1 and Form 2. It was more confidence thing. It was more encouragement thing. Go up on the board and solve this equation and so on. And that was actually quite an inspiring thing to do, because it turned out that became my pet subject, to the point where it was first in maths in school in Form 5 and Form 6. So it things can be done, and somehow it takes a personal teacher to sometimes get you there, or a mentor or something, and that was good. And the other person is of course Roy Chonkit, because he was one of those teachers that wrote every single assignment by hand. and he corrected everyone's by hand and wrote up everyone's paper by hand. And he would always show you, you would think you're the brightest one in the class or whatever. You solve the equation, you solve the problem, and he would show you how to do it better.
Wow, that's amazing.
And what I'm saying is that also kind of instills in you, well, wait a minute, you know, there's so much to learn. There's so much to actually, he turned out to be teaching the class teaching one of the classes where he went to be a student. But so I wasn't surprised. But what I'm saying, he was one of those people that was not only, you know, clearly brilliant, out of this world, calculating a problem in his head before you could finish your calculator, but he was also a tremendous teacher, and always showing you where you can improve. And sometimes that you need that too.
Definitely, most definitely.
Yeah, Mark, I have some information for you about, I believe you are talking about Gadraj. And
That's right.
actually, he is now in your field in Texas. He's a CEO of some company in Texas. I have him on LinkedIn. I can share his information with you. If you're,
I would like to connect with him, clearly.
yeah, but yeah, he's in oil and energy and stuff like that, but in Texas.
Well, look at that.
With respect to so who influenced me, well, I kept talking about it all the time. Father Lifehook, you know, he had he created this fire in me to do mathematics and be able to solve really difficult problems. And I learned more about him actually much later on. I have this friend, Father Tam. He used to be the principal at St. Joseph College, and I've kept in touch with him over the years. And so he was a good friend of Father Lifehook. And he recently wrote an autobiography, and he talked about his, you know, his relationship with Father Lifehook, and very interesting. I didn't realize Father Lifehook was such a great mathematician. You know, but yeah, so his influence on me was important.
Excellent. Tracy? You got enough time to think about it?
Yeah, trying to weigh all these people in my mind. I think the one who influenced me the most was DV. You still know him as DV?
Yeah.
Father Tivertel. So he was a historian, right? So he, as a principal in my time, it had to put into words that at that time of St. Mary's College, in that particular period, as you know, DV was a disciplinarian. You know, but he wasn't a disciplinarian that would be harsh. You know, I remember distinctly, and I don't want to sound bad here, but somebody did something really, really negative, a boy, and he put them in front of the everybody on stage, and he gave them what's it called, strokes. I don't know if you call it strokes still. Get them strokes, you know. So put behind a blackboard. He hid the boy from everybody, and he gave the boy strokes. And it may sound like a bad thing, and I don't want to glamorize these kinds of things, but for me, watching that as a Form 2 person, I kind of understood the power of discipline on the one hand, but also the punitive nature of what might happen if you as a you know, you're thinking all these negative things. You know, what could you do? What could happen in your school? You can embarrass your school, you can embarrass your uniform, you can embarrass yourself, you can embarrass your parents. And I think he never did it again. That was the only one time I remember him doing it. And I think that, even for the whole school, that was a pivotal moment at that time somewhere in the 80s, where maybe things may have gone one way or the other in terms of how, you know, the discipline in the school may have gone. And to a large extent, St. Mary's ran pretty smoothly in the 80s. And I kind of credit DV for that kind of calm, you know, I don't know if you know how he speaks very calmly. You know, he said, boys, yeah, so and so is the case in history, and he goes into this historical thing. Not very exciting, but certainly, you know, what somebody who is very calmly telling you what you want to do as a student, focus on, achievements, focus on goals, and just don't do the wrong thing. And, almost bringing that priest-like attitude to the whole thing. And that really influenced me. I think out of all the people who were in St. Mary's at that time, I think Davey was the man who really, thinking about it now, make me think about it, who influenced me the most.
Well, he's still like that. He has not changed. And he will continue to be like that. So as we near the end of today's proceedings, so I just want to just drive it home. So we have Mark, you were in the science field. Patrick, you were in math field. Tracy, science, and then you branched off into IT. And Andre in the science field. You all remember I started off our program this evening by saying I'm going to put Mark on the spot. So,
Gosh.
so Mark, oil and gas.
You're supposed to forget that.
Oh, no. I have a very good memory, sir, right? So oil and gas, that's definitely science field, right? Tell me about MarcLoquanmusic.com now.
Good. Well, music was always a kind of stabilizer,
right,
for me. So as you got stressed out, whether in school or university or work, it became this kind of world that you relaxed in. Also, so it is a distressor for me. It is a nice. I enjoy it, right? So I guess from the teenage days, I started writing some compositions, love songs and those kinds of things. You hear a song on the radio and you learn to play it because you didn't have internet in those days, so you had to kind of figure it out. But as you know, went through university, I'll always be the one disturbing the neighbor, trying to study. And I'll be playing, and everybody saying, "Hey, exams tomorrow, keep quiet." But as that went on, I got I got much older, and I would say I got some visitors from Norway, and they I said, "Oh, I want to show you our culture." So I took them to Panorama, and from that day I said, "Well, I used to play guitar as a teenager, but I'm here was I 30 years old or something like that." And they came, and I said I had to learn this instrument because when I took them Panorama, which I never used to really go to, this kind of blew me away. So I started to compose for Pan, and that was okay. I started off with small goals. It'd be nice to hear my music played in Panorama. That was the next goal, from composing love songs and things, and it ended up being played in Panorama. So I did that for like 20 years, up to, I don't know, 2020. Songs were played, almost every year in Panorama, and I reached the finals. That's good. Then I said, well, maybe I should, put this on the web and so on. And then eventually, we started to score the music as well. And I thought it was very important to score the music and preserve it and make it available and so on. And get involved in NGOs with music literacy and that kind of stuff. And it turned out that the music, I went to Japan, and when I was living in Australia at the time, I went across to Japan because I guess that's the closest I'll get to Japan, from Australia. And there was, 5 steel bands playing my music, you know. And then I went to Finland when I was living in Europe and so on, in Norway at one point in time, and there was some Finnish band playing my songs. And before NGC, I was living in Australia, and there were some Australian bands and New Zealand bands playing my music. So I actually got involved in a steel band in Australia where I started a steel band, and I just told the guy that he was in charge of the Caribbean organization, and I said, well, let's get some Tapans in from they never had steel band in the west side of Australia. They have like about 10 on the east side, or at that time. So we started one. But then I found myself, I had to teach them how to play bass, tenor, and so on. and they're still playing. But as some years ago, COVID has of course put a damper on that. But I guess it was an important avenue to try to, you know, I guess some argue if you meet me, which one is the hobby and which one is the work. And I've tried to keep it separate, right? Where if we're talking work and as president of NGC, I'm talking work. And then the passions, the music stays separate, which is how I've normally had it. It's getting harder to kind of keep them separate after many years. Like you went and do research and so on, but it's a good distressor, and it's I've met so many people around the world in that whole sphere of the pan world, as we call it, the pan community, that really identify with Trinidad and Tobago and the instrument. And I think we're blessed.
Thank you very much, Mark. So, Mark, and by extension, the rest of you, I guess is it safe to say that your experiences in St. Mary's College have adapted you all to be the individuals that you are today?
Definitely.
So, finally, and I want you all to really, really think about it. In one statement, if you had to share it with our boys now, choosing their careers, going off into tertiary, give me one statement that they could take with them, that they can imprint with them for their future adventures. One statement. What do you think it is going to be? Well, you all guys in an exam, boy. I would have loved to have you all as students.
I mean, I will go with the usual stuff, right? Which is follow your passion. Don't follow the money, don't follow the power, follow your passion, follow something that you will enjoy doing for the rest of your life. That would be it for me.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that, and I would also probably want to say that always remember that you can achieve the impossible. So stretch yourself, stretch your targets, stretch your thinking. Nothing is impossible. So definitely, stretch as far as you can and achieve the impossible.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Andre.
I mean, I think for me, it's a quotation that I still think of in the motivational posters. I have something on my phone that I look at every day. Something I learned of in St. Mary's, and it's from St. Jerome, and it reads, "Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better, and until your better is best."
Excellent. And finally, Mark.
Yeah, I would say, aim for the world, have confidence in yourself. I agree fully with Patrick about finding something that makes you happy with in the job that you do, whether it's music production or whether it's being a doctor. I think that's important, and never compromise on your integrity and values and character, and how you approach things is just as important as the results.
Excellent. Thank you. So, in concluding, gentlemen, Mr. Marc Loquan, Professor Patrick Hosein, Mr. Tracy Hackshaw, and Dr. Andre Earle, words cannot express the gratitude that we, the family of St. Mary's College, feel for you all right now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And rest assured that you all will always be members of the family of St. Mary's College. I will always say, we as a school, we do not teach students, we teach family. So on behalf of our principal, Mr. Nigel Joseph, who incidentally was my Dean of Form 1 when I came in here in 1991, and look at it now, I'm working with him, and Mr. Brevin Nelson, President of the Past Students Union, and myself, Mr. Nigel Sampas, Dean of Form 1 of St. Mary's College. And I did some calculations while you all were speaking. I've spent 67% of my life in St. Mary's College. I was born and bred here in St. Mary's College, and I always remember my interview with Father Mendez. It was a Friday. He watched me, my face, and he said, Nigel, why you want to come here to teach? And I said, St. Mary's College made me the person that I am. So, gentlemen, St. Mary's College has played a pivotal role and continue to play a pivotal role in your lives and in the lives of our sons and in the lives of our parents. So to our parents and to our students, I really and truly hope that you all sat down and internalized, you all listened to the attitude, you all value the concept of networking, you all value the concept of mental health, of finding that coping mechanism in these very, very uncertain times. So, gentlemen, I thank you very, very much for taking the time and the effort, because I know the demands of your job, but you all made the time. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I wish we could continue to speak, because my God, if I continue to speak more, if you all know the person that I am, Andre knows the person that I am, I will begin to get very emotional, because I love what I do, and you all are sons of the school. So thank you once again, and be safe out there. Have a good evening, all.
Thank you very
Everyone.
much.
Thanks,
Thank you
Nigel.
all.
Thanks, brother.
Bye.
Bye.